Welcome to episode 408 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always. And this week we've got a lot to be thankful for. Pun intended, of course, because if you're listening to this when it drops, today is Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So I hope that everyone listening had a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving, wherever you were at, however you were celebrating. And hopefully today you're having a wonderful day as well, whether that involves shopping your heart out or sleeping off and napping off all the food you ate yesterday, or just living your life. Whatever it is you're doing, I hope it's going great. Hope you had a great week, and I hope you're ready for this great interview with Jamie Kucinski, the drummer and mastermind behind 13 Minutes. Jamie has been on this podcast before, but it has been quite a while. And when I say quite a while, that is not an understatement. I'll get to that here in a bit. But before we talk to Jamie and a bit about 13 Minutes, I need to let you know who sponsors this podcast. DEB Concerts is a concert promoter based right here in the Tulsa area. They brought tons of great acts to the downtown Tulsa area at the club level. They brought acts to the BOK Center. They booked the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. Tons of great artists. And guess what? Tomorrow night, November 30th, at the Cain's Ballroom, the Cancer Sucks benefit, the 17th Cancer Sucks benefit, I believe it's the 17th. I hope that's right. If not, forgive me. But Cancer Sucks benefit is happening at the Cain's Ballroom tomorrow night. DB Concerts is a sponsor. Stephen Piercy, the lead vocalist of Rat, will be headlining this event, and it will also feature Quiet Riot. So hey, if you like 80s rock, you can't go wrong with this. Of course, you got two of the heavy hitters from the era. And speaking of that, here in this interview with Jamie, we're going to be talking a bit about that era. Kind of plays into what Jamie has been doing with his band. So we're going to get to that in a bit, but DEB Concerts. Find them on their socials. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are all at DEB Concerts. Give them a follow so you don't miss any future updates. Of course, right here at the Underground, we'll bring you updates as well. DEBconcerts.com for info on tomorrow night's concert. And tickets, of course, cainsballroom.com. And of course, with it being Cancer Sucks, that's a great benefit that's been going on for a long time. So get out there, show your support, and hear some great 80s rock while you're at it. All right, do you need a tattoo? Because I know where you should get it, and that's Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. Well over 25 years of experience from Jake Thompson and his crew. It is Native American owned, and there is a female artist on staff full-time. Give him a call, shoot him a message so you can set up a time to talk about what work you're looking to have done. If you got an idea ready to go, they can knock that out for you. If you're having trouble, finalize what it is that's in your mind, they can, of course, help you with that as well. Hit up their socials, Sunset Tattoo Tulsa on both Facebook and Instagram, and you can see a ton of photos from their work throughout the years. I've had a couple different tattoos done by Jake at Sunset Tattoo that I'm very happy with. I'm going to be having more in the future. I know a lot of other people that have, a lot of touring musicians have as well. So hit up Sunset Tattoo to get your next tattoo, and of course let them know you heard about them right here on Thunder Underground. All right, the subject at hand today is Jamie Kucinski from 13 Minutes, and I'm not going to waste too much time talking about other subjects like I do on a lot of episodes, because a lot of episodes, are 30, 45 minute, maybe an hour interviews. This one goes about an hour and 20 minutes, as I expected. When I made the post, promoting the fact that it happened, Jamie, of course, said, you had to know that it was going to go quite a while with me on board because, Jamie can talk. But the thing I appreciate about Jamie is that when he talks, it all has weight and it all has meaning. A lot of people can ramble and never shut up, but then some people talk and everything they say means something. And that's what Jamie does. And I've always loved, listening to him speak, whether it be me talking to him or hearing him in another interview or something, or just following his social media. If you're not his friend on Facebook, shoot him a friend request, because he's one of those guys that posts daily. He posts a lot about his band, of course, promotes that, but he posts about all different types of subjects. Very, very well spoken, very in-depth kind of guy when it comes to his thoughts. And he's also very well at, taking both sides to account. And I find that, in a lot of instances, especially everything we talked about in this interview and a few other things, I always, seem to be on the same page with him when it comes to, his thought process. So, of course, I appreciate that as well. But Jamie's been the drummer of 13 Minutes since the beginning. He is the only original member left. The band started around 2016, I believe. Something else we speak about is last time, like I alluded to up front, last time Jamie was on this podcast was about 8.5 years ago. It was the spring of 2016, and now we're in the fall of 2024. Can you believe that? This podcast has been going on 9.5 years. So Jamie came on around the first year, close to the first year mark, episode 52. I haven't listened back to a lot of those early episodes in a long time. I'm afraid to hear how I sound. But, hey, go check that out because I guarantee you Jamie had a lot of great stuff to say. In that interview, we focused a lot on Impact Events, which was Jamie's promotion company for, his events that he was doing, like Not So Silent Night at Christmas time and Serpent Stomp. And, just, of course, 13 Minutes in the transition from his band Far From Sanity. And, of course, he's going to talk about that here in this interview as well. If you want to give 13 Minutes a follow, do it on Facebook. It's 13 Minutes, of course. That's Roman numerals, XIII. 13 Minutes Official on Facebook. 13 Minutes Band on Instagram. Hit him up on Linktree. Let me pull this back up. I had it a minute ago. I believe it's Linktree. Yeah, 13 Minutes Official as well. You can see everything there that they've got going on the socials and their web presence. They've got an album that came out in 2019 called Obsessed that is great, fantastic. If you have not heard it, I implore you to go check it out. But more importantly, they've got 2 new songs out, 2 new singles. One that came out this summer and one that just came out earlier this month, I believe, about a month ago. Cult Leader has been out a few months and Pitiful has only been out a few weeks. Both these songs display what the band is doing now, a slight shift and change, but you still get your heavy rock, melodic, great, big choruses, great sound. Pitiful is the current single. It's absolute fantastic. I can't stress that enough to people. You got to check this out. They've got a teaser up for a song that's coming early next year that Jamie and I talk about as well. Tons of great stuff here. Real quick, before we jump into the interview, I want to let you know, if this is your first time listening or you're not real familiar with the podcast, 407 previous episodes to this, as you could see. I've had on members of, I'll be blatant here when we're talking about 13 Minutes, who is a Christian metal band. I've had on pretty much the king of Christian rock when it comes to, hard rock and the mainstream, which was Michael Sweet of Stryper. He was on here not that long ago, actually, earlier this year. A couple years ago, I had on John Cooper of Skillet, who is kind of like the big dog in the world of mainstream Christian hard rock now as well. I've had on members of Seven Dust, Killswitch Engage, Hellstorm, Guns N' Roses, Whitesnake, Twisted Sister, Queensryche, Motley Crue, Testament, Megadeth, The Black Dahlia Murder, Kiss, Pop Evil, Great White. The list is great and long, so just dig through there. All right, with that being said, now it's time for me to stop promoting myself so Jamie can promote his band. Here is Jamie Kucinski of 13 Minutes. Obviously, you want to talk about the new singles and, the new direction and the sound and everything. But before we get to that, since it's been many years since you've been on the podcast, way too long. And, now at this point, it's been 5 years since Obsessed came out.
Mm-hmm.
And, here we are now with a totally revamped, new lineup. You've got, Thomas that is carried over from the previous lineup, but now he's switched to guitar. So it's technically a new lineup outside of you. I know this is kind of a broad question, but for someone that was a fan of Obsessed and just now hopped back on, say, let's see what 13 Minutes is doing. And they see, the 2 new songs the new lineup. How would you explain to how we got to where we're at now?
Well, it's called being in a band.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, gosh, we're coming up on year nine as an entity. And you know how we started off. You were there at the beginning. You saw the transition from Far From Sanity into what would become 13 minutes. And, sometimes you start off with an idea and a thought, and as time goes on, you realize that new ideas come into play, or sometimes paths just simply diverge. People want to go do other things. So you walk together for a season, and then sometimes those seasons come to an end, and really that's been the case, and a lot of it, with I'll just talk about Michael and Aaron, who are really the fulcrums that of the beginnings of who we are and the primary voices of what you hear on Obsessed. And honestly, with Aaron, life just happened. When we started playing together in 2012, he was didn't have kids. So during the journey of walking together doing music, two kids came into the world, and life changes when those children arrive. And so Aaron realized that we were becoming far busier than he could commit to. And so a choice had to be made, and he chose, and he chose wisely and rightly. He chose family.
yeah,
It's sometimes really, really hard, especially when your kids are small, to juggle what we do. Of course, obviously, we've hit the road and we've gone out and done a lot of other things besides just playing local stuff, which is kind of was where we started. And with that, he's like, "Hey, I need to commit more time to this season of my life." And I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I mean, I miss him, but he made the right choice. You need to invest in your kids more than this thing. And with Michael, Michael's a funny story because he was our new guy. He was the person we didn't know, when we started this journey, and we got to know one another over the time and the path, and we realized at a certain point that our journeys weren't meant to go further than where they ended. And he is doing a project now that is infinitely different than what we're doing today. So he's doing a lot more heavier metalcore. I would call it more like the third gen metalcore that we're hearing all over the place. And
yeah.
whereas we never really wanted to take the metalcore path. Michael was heavily influenced by metalcore when he came into the band, and so we drew upon his influences and worked to integrate them into what we were becoming. But at some point, we wanted to go a different direction. He wanted to go a different direction, and paths diverged at that point.
Okay.
And so here we are. Gosh, what is the
So,
defining sound that people are saying? A lot of people are calling us alt metal now. So
yeah.
hard rock, alt metal. Um, Hearing references to Red, Breaking Benjamin, which for me, I think is a really good place to be. I love that stuff.
Are you
So yeah.
saying that like even before Michael wasn't in the band, you were already having this vision of moving away from that sound to where you're kind of at now?
Oh yes, most
Okay.
definitely. When me and well, just kind of going way back, me and Aaron, when we started working on this project, our first vocalist, just kind of the person we pursued, was hard rock, man. He no metal whatsoever. And so that was where our mind was. Aaron is heavily influenced by the likes of Seven Dust and Tremonti and Creed, and
Yeah.
so he had an idea to go that way. And honestly, I love that stuff too. And so that was really what we started as. And we were really in an infinitely different position when we started than we are today. Um, and I hate this sounds really terrible, and I hope it doesn't come off as such because it's not meant to be, but we didn't have as many resources. Our selection was was minimal. We didn't yet understand what we're doing today. And, of course, we're spread out all over the country as a band. So we hadn't yet really embraced technology and distance. And so you work with what's available to you in the moment. And we felt that Michael really was the best of everybody that auditioned. Now, we set out a goal. We said, your growling is fine. We like it. It brings a lot of intensity and energy, but we really want you to develop your clean voice because where we're going is primarily singing. That's where we were headed even then, as far as a goal. And I, I think I think at some point he capped where he wanted to go, and he said, "This far and no further."
Yeah.
And it happens. I mean, even the best of bands, they have a divergence of ideas. And I was I always refer back to Kiss. Kiss started out as friends, 1973. Yeah, I love reading the story how they all talked about traveling from show to show in the station wagon, and it was really a naive and unique time, a time of growth and learning about one another. And but over a period of time, you know, the paths diverged. You had Paul and Gene who really leaned heavily into a business model. And you had Peter and Ace who are like, dude, I didn't get into this to play for business. I got into this to play rock and roll, have a good time.
Yeah.
And so it was very, at a certain point, those paths and ideals diverged from one another. And of course, we all know the history after that, but they're not much different than most bands are concerned. And especially when you start with strangers, you really don't know one another. You have ideas, but you really don't know until you've spent some time in the car with one another.
Yeah.
Hotel rooms, the exhaustion of touring, and all those wonderful things, and you find out a lot about yourself and about the people next to you.
You bring up the business aspect, and I've always appreciated, how open you've been about that, like in your social media posts or in interviews, just about how, a band is a business, where you're at now with the changing lineup, being the only original member as a drummer, a lot of times would come with more scrutiny than it would if it was just the singer that was the only original member. So, like, how
Right.
do you explain that to someone who's like, the people that are just kind of misguided on it, are just like, oh, it's not the same or whatever, because it's a different sound, because it's a different guitarist and a different singer.
Hmm. Well, I am very self-aware. We are one of the
Yeah.
most overlooked positions in the band.
Yeah.
um I think it takes a skilled ear to understand the nuances of drums. From a layperson, it's probably not what most people pay attention to, and that's okay. I get it. I have gone through great lengths, though, to dial in what we were really looking to do. If you look at Obsessed, we'll just use hypothetical, and we can even take it as far back as Far From Sanity, because honestly, 13 Minutes was Far From Sanity with a different vocalist when we started. There When we started the path, when we entered the studio back in 2015 to start developing our first album, what would eventually have released on Rottweiler Records, under the name Far From Sanity, ended up becoming 13 Minutes. But we were given a directive when we went into the studio, and one that I wholeheartedly agree with, and one that I worked very hard to dial in, even since that day. And they said it like this: work on your hooks, your lyrical hooks, and your heavy grooves, and cut back on writing novels in your lyrics. And I'm like, I'm sold. That's all I've ever wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
And but if you go back and you listen, there was always lyrical hooks, always things that you could. It doesn't matter if you knew the rest of the song or not. You're gonna. There was something that was gonna get into your brain, and it was gonna grab you. Fast forward into the early parts of 13 Minutes, and I think for me, one of the coolest moments was when we opened for Stryper down at the Diamond Ballroom. I was really, really concerned how this was all gonna. I mean, I understood why we were asked, but I was still concerned: is that crowd going to embrace us?
Right.
And I was sitting there as everybody was filing out, just people watching and listening, and just kind of waiting for everything to clear. And all of a sudden, people started shouting from one room end of the room to the other, "I'm obsessed!" And people were like singing this, and as they were filing out, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're singing our song at a Striper show." I'm like, we are on to something. Okay, we need to really continue to take that focus and dial it in even further. And so that's really been the thread that weaves through our songs. Is if you look even early on to today, you're going to find lyrical hooks are heavy. So I say all that for this is if you pay attention, you're going to hear the familiarity. So we're not pitching off in left field. We didn't become a country band all of a sudden.
Right.
Second to that is there is a lot more to a band than a song. I'll give you some good examples. We talked about Kiss. I don't think anybody would argue that Kiss is more than just a song. The songs are part of Kiss, but it's so much more. A song doesn't create the Kiss Army,
Yeah.
you know? Um, Kiss were some of the first forerunners to dial into the marketing and the visuals, and of course they borrowed from Alice Cooper, and who is an entity of itself. I mean, I think most people can recognize the visual of Alice Cooper before they ever know a song by Alice Cooper. Metallica is another great, and I would call them a brand. They are they are very different now than they were when they started, but I think sometimes that comes with artistic growth and development and change. But there are certain things about Metallica that have not changed. I love what Jason Newsted said. He said Metallica is the world's greatest garage band. And
Yeah.
if you really look through the catalog of Metallica, they've never done anything over polished, you know. I mean, it's a sound and it's hard to describe, but you know it when it's there. And of course, you got Lars. Lars is a brand of his own. We're going into the drummer territory.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of scrutiny as a drummer, and rightfully so in some ways. But I will argue that to play Lars like Lars is a really difficult challenge. And could you imagine Metallica without Lars Ulrich?
Right. No.
Lars actually, in the process of everything, kept the business model going when James was disconnecting. You know, and anybody knows that Kirk has always kind of been hands off, and you know, of course, we know the Newstead and the Trujillo thing, but it was Lars that really kept the business model pushing forward when everybody else was kind of going off and doing their own thing. He doesn't get enough credit for the business acumen he brought to the band, the brand, if you will. He was the one that went and argued against Napster too, you know, his somewhat personal demise in the moment, but he saw some things coming, monetarily speaking. And I've taken lessons from all of these guys, and as of course we're all, you know, at a certain age inspired by the visuals. I mean, when MTV came along, you knew the person sometimes before you knew the song. And that's because of the video. I mean, imagine what's a good example? Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
He's the king of visuals. He just dropped a new album, and you look at the visuals. And so I've gone at great lengths. A lot of people don't really realize that I have crafted the brand of 13 minutes from the logos to the artwork to the culture. Everything that has been associated with 13 minutes was fostered by me. And I don't say that arrogantly. It's just one of those things that's true. And so as members started to go do their own things or leaving, much like Lars Ulrich, I'm sitting there trying to keep everything together and moving forward. At a certain point, I said, okay, it's all right if you guys don't want to do this business thing. I mean, a lot of us don't get into it for that reason. I like it. I think business moves the needle if you're wanting to go a certain way in the music industry, the music business. And somebody in the band has got to know how to do it. And as this all developed and members came and members went, I really was the one that knew how to get places. And so to some degree, it became a deference. It's like, okay, you know how to go and you know how to take us, now take us. And well, here I am, I'm the last guy, but I can tell you all the ins and the outs of everything, how it was created, why it was created, you know, the purpose of it all, where we've been, where we're going. I can tell you everything, and that's a pretty unique place to be. And when you get to that place, you're looking back with all the transitions going. At least for me, I'm like, I'm not gonna waste 9 years of my life because somebody didn't want to keep up or somebody didn't want to stay with me. You can go where you want to go, but I'm going to keep this thing going because it's been good.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems callous sometimes. It seems like I'm being a jerk, but the truth is, I think anybody that looks at the work of their hands and the amount of sweat equity that they put into something, and they're going to look over and say, "Okay, you can leave, but I'm staying right here. This is what has been built." And I think that's the place I've gotten to is like, no, I'm not starting over now.
Yeah. So when you bring in when you brought in Jared and sorry, I forgot the bass player that replaced Preston's name. Like,
Justin.
okay,
Mhm.
or even Preston, Preston and
Or
Justin. So when
Preston.
you bring these guys in, do you talk to them about this? Like, I mean, obviously, like they've got to be on the same page with you, when it comes to, your ministry and fellowship and, the way you live your life and all that. But when it comes to the business aspect, where did you lay all that out kind of
I
as
do.
far, okay. Yeah.
The big thing I want everybody to understand is this. I want you to be comfortable in where we're going. I get that there's ideas about what we are. I get that there's I mean, again, at the risk of sounding boastful, and I'm really not intending to be, but I know what it looks like to some people to have a professionally done album. I know what it looks like to some people to tour. I know what it looks like to some people to go play festivals. I know what it looks like, and when you come in, you have some certain ideas about the dream and the dream,
Yeah.
but you don't, and all of us have been there. We don't have a concept what it took to make that dream a reality. And so you come in with these preconceived ideas of this is my dream, but you don't understand, number one, whose shoulders that you are standing on to be here in this band in this moment of in time, but you don't understand the work. And I think that's one of the biggest surprises for a lot of people is the amount of work that goes into the dream. And I want people to have a really good, at least a baseline understanding that this didn't just happen. This was a lot of sacrifice. This was a lot of balance. This was a lot of saying no to certain things to say yes to other things. This was a lot of people helping us along the way. So there's a deference that we have to certain people and how they really helped us to become what we become. Um, it's not about the one person. It's about a whole lot of other people that were here that were in this circle before these other people ever got here.
Another thing with the new lineup is you're a four-piece now. So like
Mhm.
what was the decision to not have the two guitars? And do you think like in the live show has that not been noticeable to you or anything?
No,
Yeah.
some of that comes to the change in writing. Thomas and Aaron are vastly different guitarists. They both have great strengths and opportunity areas, as we all do as musicians. And my goal with everybody that comes into the band is to look at what they do great and maximize that. And if that means we develop and change a bit, then so be it. Um, and with Thomas, Thomas is a very rhythmic player, not a lot of leads, but man, the boy knows how to write a good just riff and hook. And that's a great strong suit of Thomas's. So for a lot of it is about adapting to the personnel that come into the band and helping maximize what they do great.
Well, thinking about like when you're playing the songs live from Obsessed, does it do you personally notice a difference, since you've got different players playing these songs? Or
I do.
did you ask, like them to just do their own thing? Or is it more of a, we need to try to, make Water Vice sound like Water Vice or, Obsessed sound like Obsessed, that kind of thing?
What's funny about that question is that
Yeah.
sometimes it's not just the players, it's the people that come out to the show that really make the song what it is. A good example of that, I'll get, we were in Mexico a few months ago and we have a call and response and we're sitting there talking, going, should we do a call and response in English? Will they understand what we're saying? And we were trying to make fun of anybody. It was just like a general thing, like how do we do this to maximize what we're doing in a foreign country? And so we had this idea, how about we don't use the words? How about we just use the melody? And so in Who Told You, we actually translated Who Told You to see if it could keep the melody. It's like, that's not gonna work at all. So we just went, whoa, whoa, but of course in the melody of Who Told You, and this call and response, this beautiful thing happened with the audience, and they really received it, and they changed the trajectory of the song for us. And
Okay.
so we've been using the woes rather than the actual lyrics now since we played in Mexico. Um, Obsessed. Obsessed is that juggernaut song where it's our call and response, and that's the people's last moment in the show to grab a microphone and sing with us. And at the end of it, it's like, well, we just adapt to the moment. There's not this really stringent kind of concept that we utilize with a lot of this stuff. I guess that's a little bit of punk rock in us. But as far as the song structures themselves, I want them to be recognizables. Again, much like working into the new material, we're not trying to rewrite, history here. We're just trying to honor it. And Obsessed is one of our songs that's probably not going away. It's not going away because of the audience participation. But you got to play the structure of the song, but you don't have to be identical. Just give a good idea of what it is. We understand little nuances may go away that maybe another musician did, but at the same time, I don't want it to suck.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be not recognizable. But also I understand sometimes that some of the music that it's a different wheelhouse. And so you let that music go. Water Vice is a good example. Um, Michael excelled really well with his growls. And that's a intense growling song. And I think Michael with his growls is really hard to replicate, so we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, there are things where we'll utilize Jared's growls, but I would go ahead and say Jared's voice and the way he controls his cleans is where Jared thrives. And so for us, we've moved to our song selection of okay, where do we use more cleans and less growls? Whereas with Michael, we're like, well, where do we do more growls and less cleans because of the strong suit that Michael had.
Speaking on that, more cleans, Cult Leader. You guys released that, and that was the first kind of introduction to this new lineup. You've kind of talked about the direction on that, and then you released Pitiful, which is still different than Obsessed, but it's a different than Cult Leader. So is that what we can kind of expect from you guys? Is it kind of going to be a broad spectrum of sound, or either of those a good indication of what we can expect from future singles?
I think they both harness one thing that we wanted to do, and we wanted to accentuate clean vocals.
Okay.
Of course, Cult Leader, Pitiful, both great hooks. So remember, we're dialing in that brand. It's full of stuff that you can sing to. But both the new songs are definitely there. There's some growls, a little bit of icing on the cake, if you will, but mainly clean. So you're going to hear a lot more soaring vocals as opposed to the growls. As far as where we go, like sonically, I don't know. I had an idea. I'm not gonna lie. I had an idea, and what I realized is that idea was really limiting. And I think I was trying to force these guys into the box because of my understanding of where we've been. And that was really keeping their what they do really well creatively at bay. I wasn't allowing them to bring it in. And so when I finally got my thick head, got it through my thick head, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just see what they got. Let's see what they got. Let's let them loose. Then everything really started opening up. So I say all that really for the future is like, I don't know. When you start one of the fun things for me at this point is it's almost like when you start the band, initially, and that whole kind of exploration and adventure of creating something new hits you, and you
Yeah.
get invigorated by that excitement of creating something new. And somewhere along the lines, you forget about it. It's easy to do that whenever you're so much in what's going to happen next. You forget just how why you got here. Um, these guys have really made it interesting for me again. Not that I didn't like what I was doing, but it's really opened the doors to let's see what happens. Like, let's, there's a big coloring book. I tell the guys, hooks and grooves, hooks and grooves. Let's keep it there. We live there. The coloring book is, the pages are big. Let's just see what happens.
I gotta say, I did love the promotional aspect. You guys, the campaign you kind of did with Cult Leader. I thought that was great with the Kool-Aid Man concept. Like, was that your idea or who brought that into the fold?
Back to the crowd.
Okay.
Okay. Again, we had a concept of why we were doing Cult Leader. Me and Thomas have been working on Cult Leader for a long time. And we've gone through, it's like I was telling him, I was like, guys, we got to stop changing band members because I'm up on stage playing five different versions of the stinking song and forgetting which one we're in now. Um, but we started on this path, and there's some underlying thematic elements of why we wrote that song. And one day I get a message from a guy who follows us, and he sends me this piece of art. And it's what we ended up using for the single, the Kool-Aid Man in the white suit. And I'm like, that is it. He's like, man, I was thinking about you. He's like, I was listening to, the demo and everything, and I thought this, I thought of you, and I wanted you to have it. I'm like, dude, this is perfect. And so we started really hammering in on that, promoting it, and not really realizing what was about to occur. Dude, I wish I had some things sitting here by me, but I had a lady from Indiana message me, and she's like, I have a gift I want to give you. And she sent me a picture of a 1980s like Kool-Aid jug, the Kool-Aid Man jug and five goblets. And it's like this cool thing from, when you're a kid. And she's like, I want to give this to you. I thought about you when I saw it, and I don't have a need for it. I'm like, well, I'd buy it from you. She's like, no, I just want to send it to you. What's your address? And so now I got this really cool retro Kool-Aid Man. And so he sits at our table, and he's our tip jar now.
Oh no.
And but like I had people sending me Kool-Aid socks, like Kool-Aid Man socks. And I have a Kool-Aid Man Christmas ornament this year. And but the icing on the cake for me was we were in Indiana at Kingdom Come Festival. And we launch into Cult Leader during our live set, and I'm looking out in the audience. I'm like, am I seeing this right? And like I'm seeing this Kool-Aid head bobbing up and down in the audience, to Cult Leader. And I'm doing my best just not to die laughing at what I'm seeing here. And but I saw it right. It was a dancing Kool-Aid Man now at our concert. This guy, he upped the ante when we went to Audio Feed in Illinois. He showed up again. But this time he had the Kool-Aid hat, and he went literally got the white suit like the art.
Wow.
And so he shows up to our set, full garb as the cult leader. And I'm just sitting like, this is absolutely amazing. This is too fun, and this is why you do this stuff, is to really have that connection and those moments with the people who come out and support you. And so really the audience has made it what it is. And I think they've really just elevated the art itself. I can't take any credit. They did it. It was from people who said, hey, I want to give this to you, to the people who just grabbed a hold of it and said, we're going to make this ours. Uh, I would be remiss at, we played Rock in the River out in Harrison, Arkansas. And our Justin comes out, and this is kind of like his acclamation point. Like, so he's hanging out with us, and he himself brings a whole box of Kool-Aid jammers. And so during Cult Leader, we're launching Kool-Aid jammers out into the audience. Again, his idea. I didn't tell him to do it. It's so organic the way things have happened, and I'm just rolling, man. They're
Yeah.
leading the charge. I'm just rolling and having a good time with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that has to make you feel good.
It
The
does.
I mean, I haven't looked at it side by side, but was there any thoughts of like, is there any kind of like copyright, like legality thing you had to like work through to like present this, or like is that just a
That was one of the first questions,
Okay.
especially when it started taking off,
Yeah.
because God forbid I don't want Kool-Aid to come after me.
Right.
But we are protected under the parody law. It's a parody.
Okay.
It is not a direct ripoff of the Kool-Aid Man. There's definitely some stark differences
I figured, yeah.
between the original art versus what we're doing. And we're really not the first. Again, we're not inventing anything new. There's a lot of people who've used some variation of the Kool-Aid idea. Of course, Jim Jones and Flavor Aid had made it. There's a band, and I haven't gone to listen to them yet, but I need to. They're called Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid Jammers. I kid you not. And
Yeah.
and their album is called Instant Cult Classic.
Do you know what kind of music they are? Or
I don't, like I said, I just get all
okay.
kinds of stuff that comes to my
Yeah.
inbox. I get Kool-Aid memes that slowed down a little bit, but over the summer I was getting Kool-Aid memes almost every day in my inbox. It's
It's a good
again,
problem to have, you know.
it is, the I do this still, Trent, because I want to connect with people. Really, I'm past the age of being a rock star. That's not my goal. I mean, that's a 20-year-old kid's dream, and I'm certainly not a 20-year-old kid anymore. So when you really have that awareness about yourself, at least for me, I had to ask, okay, well, what's left? What makes this worth, you know, doing? And really, it goes back to the first reason I got into music. It, uh, my first reason for wanting to get into music was not to become a rock star. It was to connect with other people. And so for me, I feel like I'm probably living in more of a pure state as an artist than I ever have. And it's a cool place to be.
Pitiful. You know, we mentioned that a minute ago. There's another song you released recently. And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about, like Tremonti and Seven Dust and all that, and even Breaking Benjamin. That was kind of my first thought the first time I heard Pitiful. Not that it sounds like any of those bands, but it gave me that same feeling where it was like, Seven Dust and Alter Bridge are like always extremely well at blurring that line between hard rock and heavy metal. And I
Mhm.
feel that's exactly what Pitiful is. And it's got that, huge chorus that isn't, over the top, but it's very much like a hard rock chorus. And I just absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is, I would say after 9 years, this is my absolute favorite 13-minute song.
Wow.
And I I was asked the other day, I forget what the organization was, but there are how many songs you got? And I'm like, well, I'm looking back, I was like, I got 18 published now. And out of 18 songs, I'm looking back going, this one's my favorite.
Wow.
And it's got everything that I ever wanted to put in a song. It's radio friendly, and I know it sounds bad to people's ears, but I've
Right.
always wanted to get on the radio. Maybe I'm old fashioned that way. I wanted it to be more than just your local show. Not that I don't appreciate those local shows, but I wanted to get on legitimate radio. And there are ways you have to craft a song. And we worked with a producer named Kevin Gates in Reach Audio. And if anybody ever wants to look into Kevin, Kevin does amazing work. But Kevin has a gold record next to his name because he worked with Afro Man.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he's got more than one gold record next to his name. So we knew we'd be in good hands, but we knew that Kevin understood not just metal band sensibilities, but also pop sensibilities. And we knew that we could go in with these concepts, and the chances of them being brought out and funneled into this place we wanted to take them was greater with Kevin than pretty much anybody else that we researched. So we went in, and Kevin, he's an evil genius. He really is an evil genius. And Kevin helped us craft a very funneled output of a song in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So
Yeah.
it is catchy. The lyrics have depth and meaning. It gets stuck in your head, and FM radio is picking it up. So it's a
Yeah.
win-win.
So, speaking on that with Gates, is it like, did he produce Cult Leader? Did someone else produce that?
We recorded Cult Leader down in
Or-
Fort Smith, Arkansas at
Okay.
Studio 221. And great experience. Steele Dortch is who helped us produce Cult Leader, and Steele has also got an amazing mind. Um, Steele thinks a little bit more in abstract. Of obviously, we came out with almost a 5 minute song,
Yeah.
and a great song. A lot of experimentation within that song, but we really had a goal for this one, and it was really to give us the best chance to grab and radio attention.
Well, you also recently released this teaser for Stay, and you can tell from the teaser that this has a pretty deep message. Like, speak a little bit about what people can expect from this song and the message behind it.
If I said Pitiful is my favorite song, I would have to say Stay is my most important song as an artist.
Okay.
Um, I don't like to create shallow art. When people hear radio friendly, it doesn't mean shallow. It just means there's a certain format that is expected of radio, but you can still package it as something with depth. We did that with Pitiful. Um, Cult Leader is a deeply thought song,
Yeah.
and we've been working on Stay now for a while. Stay is one of those songs where I look at the world around me and my heart breaks. And I don't think anybody with, a set of eyes can't see just really the sadness therein. We're watching suicides happen at probably the greatest rate in human history. And we're supposed to be so connected. We got all this social media, we got more devices in our hands and ways to stay connected with people than we ever have in human history, yet we are the most disconnected.
Yeah.
And I've watched so many people wrestle with their mental health, and I've watched so many people wrestle with their value and their worth. And I'm like, we got so much more than we ever have, but people are still feeling, in fact, it feels exasperated. Like it feels like people are isolating. Maybe it's they're looking at other people's lives and they're feeling bad about their own because they're looking at these snapshots that we see in social media. I don't know. It bothers me. It bothers me. And I mean, I'll give you an example. We were in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, playing a show several years back. And we ran into this kid. He was 21 years old. And there was just something that touched us. We knew we needed to talk to this kid. I mean, and so we played our show, and we started chatting him up, and we found out that he was gonna go home and kill himself that night.
Wow.
His dad had cancer, and he felt worthless because he couldn't help his dad. And so he had deduced in his mind that I'm just going to end it and that'll do everybody a favor. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
man, you know? And I'm so honored to have been in that moment that he would feel comfortable enough to share with this rock band that, just came through town that of what he was feeling. And I'm glad that we could engage that conversation. And it really mattered to me because it was that human connection that I feel like we're missing so much of.
Yeah.
And so I don't think talking about suicide is a new thing. It's not a novel thing. I think a lot of us are talking about suicide, and I think it's good to talk about suicide. But I wanted to celebrate people with this next song, and I wanted to not just talk about suicide, but I wanted to celebrate people who have chosen to stay.
Yeah.
In terms of all the crap that surrounds us, all the dissension, all the disconnection, all the troubles that we face, they found it within themselves to stay. And I feel like we need to talk more about that. You know, there are people who have been brave enough, who have found the strength to say, you know what, it sucks. It sucks right now, but I'm gonna fight. And so this next song is really a celebration of those people. And the song is called Stay. And we're working on a campaign right now to celebrate people who have chosen to keep fighting. And so I would consider this next song my personal most important song that I've ever been part of creating. And I'm so excited to share our final vision early next year. And I hope, my prayer is that we impact people's hearts and maybe we encourage people to maybe reevaluate and say, you know what, I'm going to stay. You know, and I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if anything will happen, but I feel like we got to get this one out. I feel like we need to be present, we need to be mindful, and we need to be a voice for hope. Um, I don't know. As an artist, I don't think there's any, for me anyway, anything greater than being able to give people something to get them through to their next day and their next day and their next day. And maybe one day they'll look back and say, you know what, that song, that was the changer. That was the one that kept me going. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Have you by chance been able to keep in contact with that young man from Iowa?
No, I
Okay.
don't know. And that's the hard part of being on the road. I
Right.
wish we could keep in touch with
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
But my hope is that he receives strength from that moment to keep going because, the thing we told his dad needs him.
Yeah.
His dad
And you
needs him.
said we can expect that early 2025?
If everything goes right, the single will drop in March 2025. And I'm working on a campaign right now. I'm working with my media friends to try to get the voice out as loud as we can get it out. And hopefully it'll impact. Hopefully it'll cause a ripple effect. And our plan is to record a music video behind it and really tell the stories of people who have fought and have overcome.
That's similar to like the concept of like how Soul Asylum did with Runaway Train, like in that
Mhm.
kind of video idea.
I
Okay.
forgot about that video.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one again now for just for some extra music
Yeah.
because I don't have a full concept of I'm not a videographer. I just have ideas. I feel like the Joker sometimes. It's like you know I'm just like a dog chasing my tail. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it. And so I get all these ideas and I just throw them out and I hope somebody grabs them that's really talented
Yeah.
and helps take all these random manic thoughts that are in my head and gives them focus and vision.
Or the two tracks we've got plus Stay, are these leading towards an EP or an album, or are you just focusing on singles right now? What's the idea there?
It is the tenuous balance of the music business right now.
Yeah.
Um, Physical merch still has a place, and we definitely want to have this season of 13 minutes available at our merch table. And for those people who enjoy the CD. Um, so I still believe in the physical merch, and I'd like to at some point get some vinyl produced, and of course, all things in due time. So we will be releasing an EP. Um, I don't think I don't think music consumers have the patience for a full length.
Yeah.
So um, we do live in an age of a single, and I think it's a good thing actually. I'll give you a good example. We worked 2.5 years on Obsessed. It's a 13 track album, and I would venture to say that 70% of the songs nobody knows. And that's not just it's not personal. It's the way it is with full lengths. It's
Yeah.
people grab that song or two, and that's the ones they want. They might download it to their favorite device, go put the CD up in the closet, and come back to it maybe 5, 10 years down the road. Oh, dude, I remember that.
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to the single, you can really take all these ideas for art and concept into a song, and you can take each single and make it an experience. And so people have the ability and opportunity to get the full breadth of what you're trying to relay through the song itself. Um, I don't know. I like the single myself. I don't know if it's quite as gratifying as being an album fan, a full album where broke out the art and maybe got a poster and you look at all the lyrics and the songwriting credits and really crafted a full experience behind the album. But what I'm working to do is something similar to what we would used to do when we were kids with the full length. Um, I think it's possible. To do something similar, but it takes a little bit more intentionality as well because you don't just do it once every 3 years. Now you're doing it once every 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And therein lies the challenge in of itself there. But, we work with what we got and hopefully, we do well. And if we don't, we learn from the process and do better the next time.
Me personally, as a person of a certain age, and I'm sure you could relate, I want, a band that I like to release an album with 10 to 12 songs, but I
Mhm.
also get it from the business standpoint. If you release a song every 2 to 4 months, you're keeping people more engaged, you're more in people's minds. And plus, it also keeps you, if you're recording these as you go, it keeps you more active, and it's probably a better experience as a band as well, I would think.
It is. And again, it's the balance therein. I am of a certain age, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those guys that's, oh, back in my day, we
Right.
did it better. There were some great things about back in my day. I was talking to a friend of mine, not but a couple days ago, and it was used to go to the record store, and you would look at the artwork. You didn't have the internet to
Yeah.
go listen to the album, so you trusted your friend who might have given you a crappy recommendation. You didn't know yet.
Yeah.
Or you would go and you'd look at like how many people picked up an Iron Maiden album just because the album art was stellar.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of those albums you picked up because the art was amazing and you could see the story within the art. You had no clue about the song until you actually got home. And how many albums did we pick up where you were really disappointed because there was one really good song, Motley Crue Theater of Pain, anybody?
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, all Motley Crue albums actually, up to Dr. Feelgood. Dr. Feelgood was the pinnacle. But again, speaking of art, the artwork, Dr. Feelgood is just classic.
Yeah.
Look at Metallica's The Black Album. It's iconic now. And that's the way you used to choose things, is because the art was amazing.
Yeah.
And so you take that concept and that idea of what used to draw you, because kids today, it still draws them. Put together some really well thought, well crafted artwork. And when they're scrolling by all these gazillions of pages that we got here, music pages now, like, oh man, that one looks pretty cool. Wonder what they sound like. Sound like a familiar refrain?
Yeah.
Uh, there's nothing new under the sun. Um, the if we took some of those lessons from the guys that were back in the day and we advanced them to today's technology and what we have available to us to get our music and our voices heard now, man, it's amazing. I just what's at your fingertips, literally. How cool is it that we can push a button now and our music go to the other side of the world?
Yeah.
That is cool. Um, what we have technologically speaking today is superior to any I mean, as an artist, is superior to any era that we've ever lived in. But there is a problem to that one too, because and we're going to be thrown back to back in my day. I love going and watching. Did you watch Nothing But a Good Time, the documentary
I
about
haven't
it?
yet, but I've read
Oh,
I've read part of the book, but I haven't watched the documentary yet. Yeah.
it's great. And I love watching the documentaries about like the Sunset Strip and how
Yeah.
they used to like paste flyers upon flyers upon flyers, and they get up like at the crack of dawn and go and like
Yeah.
cover up everybody else's flyers, and they were
Yeah.
handing flyers and they were hustling because everything was so saturated. You had to figure out what you had to get in front of people.
Yeah.
Guess what we're living in today? Everything is saturated and we got to get in front of people. So you got to take that old world work ethic and you have to transfer it to modern era. And I think the bands that will work the hardest in their creativity and their desire to connect and get in front of things, I think those are the bands that the kids are going to grab, and they're going to be the ones that people go and listen to. We can't afford in any of this to be lazy about ourselves. Um, Take those '80s dudes' work ethic and now transfer it to the technology today. I think, we got a good thing today, but I think we've lost some of that zeal for the work that's required. And I think the bands that kind of dial in and really start to exercise that work ethic, those are not just work for, with no goal in mind, but understand the industry, understand the consumer, not be afraid to put in the hours and the effort. Those are the guys that are going to elevate their brand.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what success looks like anymore for a band. It's such a really weird thing, but I don't think that it's changed too much in terms of what we got to do to get to that proverbial success.
Yeah. Are you still working with Rottweiler Records with these new tracks, or are you independent now?
Independent.
Okay.
Rottweiler was a great experience. They brought us to the dance. I will forever be grateful to who they are and what they did for us. But we got to a point where it was time to move on and do something different. And um, of course, they also changed ownership, and we no longer really fit. I mean, I don't know if we ever really completely fit, but they went more into the extreme metal, and I'm like, well, we're not going to get more extreme, so we might go ahead and
Yeah.
stop here and see what we can do. I learned a lot, though. I think the biggest difference between the guy you talked to back in 2015, 2016 versus who I am today is really the knowledge and understanding of the industry. Um, I I had an idea back then, but I didn't really have complete understanding. And I will say that the understanding that I have today about what it takes to get from point A to point B definitely is infinitely greater than where I was once upon a time. And I don't know how much longer I got left in this. I'm surprised to still actually be doing this stuff,
Yeah.
but I want it to count. Um, I don't want to waste a lot of time, and so taking wisdom from those who've really helped me and brought me into places to connect with other people. I can't say it's we left on a bad term. It was just time, and I'm taking what I learned in the time with them and funneling it into what I'm doing now. And then, of course, we've made connections along the way and uh, borrowing from them and trying to be successful in our outcomes. And we'll see what happens next.
Well, speaking on these new tracks you've recorded, like how was the process? Did it feel a lot different with, different members when you guys went in to record these tracks, or was it like a easier process, better process? I mean, not to talk negatively on the obsessed time, but I mean, just like how did it differ, I guess would be a good question.
It's a matter of
Yeah.
knowing a lot more about yourself. We went in obsessed with obsessed, not really. We were new. I mean, we were new with one another in terms of this idea of where we wanted to go musically. We were new in the studio. We had never professionally produced an album in the studio. We did like a lot of bands do on the local circuit. You go in and you engineer an album and you call it good, and you don't, you got some songs in your hand that you can maybe send off to, the local shows. Um, the process that we went through in Obsessed was infinitely different. It was tougher.
Yeah.
Let's just say that it was tougher, but it taught us a lot more. By the end of Obsessed, I got a lot. When we went in, we were five guys, and five guys with five distinct voices in a democratic space. Um, as we created the album and attrition happened, certain voices became louder in the process, namely mine. And by the end of the album cycle and Obsessed, I I understood a lot more about what I wanted to become as an entity, as a band. And so you take that and you funnel it to modern day. I have taken a lot of what I learned during the process of Obsessed. And instead of starting in this place where, it's all democratic, we have a very defined goal going into the studio this time of what we want to accomplish. The big thing is excellence. We're not we're not going to go backward. Um, if we're not ready, we're not going to the studio, period. And what I mean by that is not just the way you um, play your instrument, but your willingness to be produced. And we go into the studio now, it's not just the band saying that we want to record it this way. We now open the door to people coming in that are smarter than us and say, no, do it that way. And just so there's a sometimes you go in and you have to get your palms up and trust somebody else. And it's difficult for us musicians because we got kind of these ideas, and we've been working on these ideas forever. And for somebody to come in and say, change it, it's almost like a gut punch, and it hits our egos, and
Yeah.
and not all of us are ready for that. And so there was a lot of conversation leading up going, listen, it's not just about your voice. I'm going to come in and I'm going to critique, because you don't get to release a song under the 13 minutes brand if it doesn't pass through my channels. I'm going to defer to people who are smarter than me. I want to be produced. I want to go in and utilize other people's intellect that know how to get things done and know how to teach us about what we need to do to get to those places we say we want to go. Because obviously, if we knew how to do it, we would have done it.
Yeah.
And so it sounds arrogant, but it's really not. It's a posture of humility. You have to go in and you have to listen, and you have to be willing to maybe even change your mind. And so that's the biggest difference between where we started to what we do today is number one, good enough won't cut it.
Absolutely.
It just won't cut it. So if all you want to do is good enough, if you don't want anybody to tell you to change, if you don't want anybody to tell you do it differently or try something else, you're not ready.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready, you're going to hate life where we're going. And I really don't want you to, but trust me, I we went through the ringer, as artists to get Obsessed done. I'd like to tell you and say this was all our great idea and we did it by ourselves and it was all, the intellect we brought into the studio, but that would be a lie. We were directed and we were produced and we were challenged and we were changed. And it was all for our benefit, even though it sucks sometimes to be told you suck and do it differently. But that was part of the journey. And knowing these new guys and knowing where I've been, because I was the only one in that cycle, I wanted to make sure that they understood that this is what you're going to be looking at where we're going. You're going to be challenged in ways that you may not have been challenged before. Are you ready? And it's not because I want these guys to walk away going, God, I'm the worst, musician ever. But I want them to understand that when we go in and we create, we're going to elevate what they bring, what I bring. And at the end of the day, the hope is that we come out and it is our best, not just good enough.
Yeah. I like that. I wanted to ask you something about another band real quick. I saw a post about a week or two ago from a friend of mine. You might know Luke Nagel.
Mhm.
Um, and he was had this long post about how great the new As I Lay Dying album was. So I'm like, I've got to check this out. And literally, I think the day after I listened to it, I saw you post about how much you enjoyed it. It's an absolutely killer album, and I just love it. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on it because obviously there's the huge elephant in the room when it comes to that band. But just, on a musical standpoint, it's kind of like an all-star band with Ken from Unearth and Ryan from Miss May I on the album. Of
Hmm.
course, no one's there anymore, but the album itself is great. And just kind of, you as a man of faith, like how do you balance that, elephant in the room with the music and all that?
I'll answer the question with a prefacing. Some of the artists, in fact, a lot of the artists, if we really were to dig into their personal lives, we would find them to be absolutely terrible people, yet we still celebrate them. David Lee Roth.
Yeah. Yep.
Vince.
Yeah.
Um, we we celebrate if we were to dissect the humanity creating the art, we probably would maybe think twice about some of these people we celebrate. Um, so there's that. In the days of the internet, everything is a little bit more personalized, it's a little bit closer. You got more information than what you once did. Um, and so I ask those questions. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna put this on Tim, like completely put it on Tim and say, screw that, I'm not gonna listen to him because you know what he did, then I feel like I have to apply it to a lot of other people too.
Yeah. It's a great point.
That's just the truth. And I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of elephants in the music rooms.
Yeah.
I watched do you remember the series House?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was this episode where it was like this really weird relationship between a dad and his artist daughter. Okay. And they always lent that there was something off in what was going on, and it was found that the daughter was, of course, molesting his daughter. Um, of course, nobody really blinked an eye, like that's just normal. But at the end of it, they threw kind of a curveball, and they found out the daughter was a dude, like
Hmm.
with internal, kind of like what the boxer, things going on, and House like finishes the series is like, oh, now it's gross.
Yeah.
So, everybody was like not batting an eye at this other thing, but then it got to this thing that went against their sensibilities,
Yeah.
and now it's terrible. And I've never forgotten that episode, um, because it is the way we do a lot of things in music. There are some pretty terrible things that we support. We will be against racism, but be really diehard about a certain metal singer that throws up, white power signs at his concerts. So,
There's a poster right behind me. Yeah.
it's there, it's in front of us. He's not been quiet about it, but we don't want to put it down. And I'm not here to judge anybody. I just use it as kind of a prefacing to say when I look at Tim, I'm like, I have to weigh it out accordingly. A lot of us would be remiss, and I get it, dude. What he did was terrible. Um, and then there's a human side of me because I remember listening to Tim. I remember watching his ascent in the mel, and he was so deep thinking and so intelligent, and I like a lot of my peers was sitting there when it all came out, like, how did he get there? Like, what brought this really shy, almost metal singer, very seemingly caring, adopted children from Africa, seemingly loved his wife to a place where he wanted to kill her? How does that happen? That's where my mind goes. Um, as a person of faith, I have to also look to the scriptures. And I have to look and say, well, there's this guy that we celebrate pretty heavily in the Christian faith. You might have heard of him, called King David. King David was supposed to be the person that took care of the country, his countrymen, his people, Israel. And one day he was being lazy and he just is hanging out at the castle and he saw a chick, taking a bath. He's like, ho, 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 I want that one. And he was told this chick is married. You can't have her. He's like, I'm the king. I can have her. So he calls for her and he impregnates her. And then he realizes the error of his ways. He's going to get found out. The husband is going to call him out, so he sends the husband to the front lines of this battle he's supposed to be in. And he tells his troops, put him on the front and retreat. So basically, he put a hit on him.
Yeah.
Does this sound familiar?
Right.
I don't say that to say that we should celebrate these kind of behaviors, but there's a very human idea in there. And I think if you really look a little bit deeper, you see a little bit more to the story. If you don't want to listen to him after it, if your convictions say don't, okay, I'm not one to argue with you. What he did was terrible, but does that really diminish his art? For some, it might. I don't think he became a worse artist because of what he did. To the contrary, I think he might have become just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Prison might do that to you. But then we can go into that. Do we feel like he paid his debt to society? He served a sentence. He's paying his penance. I don't know. I don't think the people who choose not to listen to him are wrong. I don't think the people who choose to listen to him are wrong either. Um, what does your conviction tell you about who it is, and can you honestly balance it within your convictions? And I would say that with any art that we endeavor on. And so that's my challenge to myself as an artist. I'm not preaching to anybody. It's just how I process what I'm looking at. I have to question my own intentions, my own integrity first, and then I have to look at the human being, and I have to rightly divide, what's going on,
Yeah.
and come to a conclusion. And I would challenge anybody that's looking at Tim to do the same thing. If you balance it out, if you examine your own heart, if you look at your own humanity, your own frailty, and you come to a conclusion, say, you know what, man, my convictions still say stay away from it. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
So that's my starting point with Tim Lambesis is looking at that. Now, I was an As I Lay Dying art fan before he did what he did. And honestly, I have remained one even afterwards. And I think he's creating some pretty fantastic songs. I think the new album is just that's my gym album now.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best stuff I've heard from them since, and like my post said, since probably mid to late 2000s. They released some pretty amazing art back in those days, and they've had some good stuff. And of course, 2013 came along, and Tim's been off the radar for a few years. But now, as far as what's going on behind the scenes, now I'm not gonna lie, I'm just as interested as the next person.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and I feel like there's something about to come out, but I don't know what. And I'm like, God, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of cheering for Tim. I'm like, I hope it's not another Mark, because I love a good resurrection story. I want Tim to do well. I want him to succeed. I want him to become better than what brought him to the place that he was at back in 2013. And so I'm holding my breath going, please, I hope this is not another Mark,
Yeah.
or is it just band drama? Whatever the case may be, it's honestly probably not my business, but out of it, boy, they did put together a great album.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was my thoughts too. It's like, because everybody joining that band obviously knew about his past from a
Hmm.
decade ago. So so what would cause them all to, vacate all around the same time all of a sudden, So it's, like you said, hopefully it's not something major against him, and it's just like, I don't like working with this guy type thing.
And it could be just that. He's
Yeah.
even gone on record recently saying, listen, I can be pretty strong-headed about things. And I don't know. Maybe they went in and they thought it was going to be something that it wasn't, and they have unmet expectations. That happens in bands. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I'm rooting for him. Put that on record. I am rooting for the guy. I want him. I want him to have a good ending. You know,
Yeah.
and not just because it's Tim Lambesis. That's just my general posturing with humanity.
Right.
is I we're all screwed up people, man. We really are, every one of us. And you can tell yourself that you're not, but you're the one that's got to close your eyes and be with your own thoughts at night. My thought is that we all got some kind of screw loose. And I'm not going to be the one that is going to damn somebody to hell when I myself need all the work in the world. So it's just not my MO. I want people to succeed. Um, so that's my general posturing with these artists. Now I'm going to call an apple, make no mistake about it. There's some pretty atrocious people, and I would love to see more from them, but sometimes they celebrate their atrociousness, and this is who they are, and you got to call an apple and say, you know what, I'm not gonna support that.
Yeah. Bringing it back to you for, maybe a final question here. Last time I talked to you, 8 years ago, you were still doing Serpent Stomp.
Mhm.
And sometime in 2023, you had made a post about how you were thinking about resurrecting it. Is that still an idea?
When you're an artist, when you're a creator, there's always ideas,
Yeah. I
always.
mean, like a distinct possibility, I guess would be a better question.
I think that I would, if I'm honest, if I'm realistic, the energy that I have to give to be excellent in something, it's just not there until I'm done playing music.
Okay.
I, I think I would have to decide this or that. Um, a lot of people don't realize that the events that I didn't have a lot of help with. Um, going back to what I told you earlier, I get these ideas and I throw stuff at the wall, and fortunately, and most times it's worked out for me pretty well. But it takes a lot because I don't believe in doing things just halfway. If I'm going to give myself to something, I'm going to be all in. Um, I don't toe dip. I dive in the deep end and learn how to swim in the process. And that's been honestly my artistic life, whether it be doing shows, whether it be forming a band. Um, but the way I do things has an opportunity cost as well, and that is that I don't have a lot of energy to give to a lot of different things. It's got to be a few select things. And with the shows, as much as I love them, and I do, oh man, the to watch it all like just unfold and be successful, man, that's a rush. I'm not gonna lie. Um, but I would be remiss to say that I, as an artist, don't like to walk into places where the guy or girl that is put on the show didn't give a crap, didn't put in the work, didn't care about what they were about to embark on. I want to promote for these bands. I want to be able to cater to them if I can, because a lot of them travel a long way to do what they do. I try to look at the lens as an artist and what I would hope would be done for me if I was traveling to somebody's show. I'd want an audience. None of us enjoy going and playing to 5, 10 people. I mean, we'll do it and we'll do it to the best of our ability, and we'll put a good face on because the people that are there deserve that. But at the end of the day, none of us want to travel 400 miles to play for 10 people.
Right.
That's just the truth. I want to be able to pay these artists. Gas isn't cheap, neither are hotels. I want to be able to pay a fair wage, and that requires a few things to come into line, whether it be sponsorships or whether it be, paying attendees. Um, you have to convince people why your event is the one that they need to come to. And you have to trust that they're going to buy tickets. And so there's so many things that go into it that I don't want to falter on, because I just feel like the audience deserves it. I believe the bands deserve it. I believe the event deserves it. And I don't know, I'm just not okay giving halfway in anything that I do. And so right now, as it is, my energy would only allow me to just be halfway. And at the end of the day, I don't think halfway is fair to anybody involved.
Well, kind of, speaking on that real quick, like you said, going out on the opposite end, you leaving town and playing somewhere to a smaller crowd, like you've always made a concerted effort to play way less local shows,
Hmm.
and I think I've always thought that was, a good way to do it because it makes every time you do it more important rather than a band that's playing town twice a month or something. People
Yeah.
say, I'll just see
Welcome
him in
to
two
her.
weeks. Yeah. Right. And people know that they can see him again in a week or two. So it's like, good to make it an event. Is that kind of still the process going forward with this new lineup? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It was really interesting to me when we did our welcome back party. We did that on such a shoestring budget. It was a bunch of friends supporting friends, and it was a lot of donated resources. And we played in this obscure church in South Tulsa that you wouldn't know was there if I didn't tell you. And it was because they opened their door and they donated the stage and space and sound to us.
Mm.
And all these things allowed us to be able to do a free show. And at the end of the day, if I can open the doors that way and allow people to come in and buy t-shirts or CDs or and invest into the bands that way, then I'm happy as pie because more disposable income, they can go make their selections and everybody is happy. And plus it also for me, it allows like parents to bring their kids out. If I'm charging $20, $25 a head, somebody's getting left out. And, you know, um, I don't know. It's just been my conviction in that way. But we at this obscure church were able to pull 200 people. We hadn't been on the scene in a couple of years and 200 people came out to welcome us back. I was like, how blessed am I?
Yeah.
And our album release party was 300 people. And so I'll never ever rail against my local scene at all with the support they've given us. I mean, my highest attended event was one of my Not So Silent Nights, and we pulled 600 people. So we're more blessed than we deserve with our local scene, but we also understand the tenuous balance that it is. Um, we don't want to overplay it. We want it to be an event. We want it to be something you can't get anywhere else. You can't get it on the internet.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I'm going to go see Jamie down at XYZ bar in 2 weeks because they'll be there too.
Yeah.
Um, when we do a show, I want a couple hundred people. That is my expectation, minimum. And I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation if you do it right.
Right. Well, man, I'm absolutely loving the new direction of the band, these new songs, and really looking forward to what you got coming next year. And so glad we finally got to do this after so long.
Yes,
Should
sir.
have happened many times, but glad we're doing it now.
Well, you guys, you've been moving and shaking in the scene now for a long time, and I always pay attention to what you got going on, and definitely cheering for you guys and the success of Thunder Underground, and of course, you've been a man about the world yourself, and so once again, back to you only got a little enough energy to go, you know, here and there. You can't do all things all the time, so. I've
Yeah.
been enjoying watching your journey as well, so it's been fun. You've gotten to go out and hang out and hobnob with some pretty darn cool people.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So, but I appreciate you guys hanging with. I mean, gosh, I think the first time I came on Thunder Underground, we were just fledgling, 13 minutes. Like, I don't even know, did we have a song out yet? You guys
I
just kind of grabbed a hold of it and
because we were talking about just the beginnings of it and the transition kind of from Far From Sanity into that. And yeah,
yeah, so that was
I believe it was I think when I talked to you the other day, I think it was episode 50. I looked up.
was it where you
I
where you
believe
at now?
40, last week was 407. So
There you go.
yeah,
There you go. So you
350
guys have
plus
changed a
episodes.
lot too.
Yeah.
So, well, we as artists need people like Thunder Underground, and again, I'm grateful. I hope other artists tell you the same thing for what you do to invest in us because you don't have to.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've had a few. It's always humbling when someone says that, so I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I go to the gym and there's this young lady that works there and she's like this super fan of different bands and she's the type of person that will get really really giddy about her favorite band almost to the point of tears, and it's fun to listen to her talk. um of course she shares all her band stories now that she's figured out that I'm in a band and I
Yeah.
do these things, and so I always get to hear when I go into the gym the newest band adventure, and the newest merch and the newest vinyl purchase, and already planning to go see her favorite band in Nashville next year. And they're not even big bands. They're not even big bands. I don't know if you've heard of Beauty School Dropout.
No.
Exactly. I know
Yeah.
they played the So What Festival last year, and I know that they do the small indie circuit. But it's just fun because watching, she's probably maybe 21, 22, and she's got that old school excitement about the bands that she supports, and there's a term now that they have for people like her. It's called super fans. And the math is this. It's really interesting to think about. A lot of us want the big numbers and the big, but if you had, and this is just general math, but it goes like this. If you had 200 people, 200 people that would invest $100 a year into your band, that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Yeah.
And and you can quantify that. And it's like most people, if you will create an experience, if you will reinvest into them, if you'll make their experiences with you memorable and fruitful, they'll continue to invest into your band. And the big idea is to make it a community. And you would call them, and I hate that word fan. I really, you know, eh, I get why people call it, but they're called super fans. It's like these are the people who will go to the ends of the earth to support your art.
Yeah.
And they're so vital to especially bands that are out there doing it DIY and indie. And so my goal is to always practice gratitude, for the people who support us, because the truth is there's so many people, so many other artists out there that could be invested into, but you and people who buy our shirts and wherever is you could have opted for somebody else, but you thought enough of us to give us a platform. And so I would be remiss to look at you and say, you know what, I'm owed this because I'm not. You chose to give me a gift today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
It's always my pleasure.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for like what, almost 9 years of support now through Thunder Underground.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming up on next May will be 10 years of the first episode. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much
so
probably about 9 years. Yeah.
what we're saying here is we're getting old.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So,
But
man, it's a blessing. It's an honor.
yeah, awesome, man. Well, once again, glad we finally got to do this again. And I can't wait to hear what you got coming with Stay and everything after that.
Yes, sir. Well, you have to give me your thoughts when everything unfolds, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after all the visuals and everything come out. It's gonna be this one. This one, like I said, I don't come really. This one, there's gravity to it for me, and it's a cool place to be as an artist because there's an importance, I think, in your work. And that's the goal. It's an incredible place to be as an artist. It's like you look at it like this has the ability to connect and impact people in a way that you always dreamt of it as an artist. And so that's the hope. And I maybe you can give me a litmus and say, hey Jamie, right on, or you kind of missed on this one, buddy.
All right, I'll do that. There you go, Jamie Kucinski of 13 Minutes. A massive thank you to Jamie for taking some time out there to hit me up on Zoom so we could have that long, long, long overdue chat about everything that's going on with 13 Minutes currently and coming up here in 2025 as well. Like I said early on, if you want to check out that previous interview from over 8 years ago, it was episode 52 of this podcast. We're now here at episode 408. It's kind of cool to think that, not that it really has anything to do with anything, but if you look at it, Jamie, 13 Minutes and Thunder Underground have kind of paralleled each other in their timeline. Of course, Far From Sanity was already together, and then they transitioned into 13 Minutes, so he's obviously been doing kind of what he's doing longer, but with that name and with Thunder Underground, we're kind of parallel on our timeline here, so something cool random that I thought about. But again, thank you to Jamie. Thank you to, everybody. It's Thanksgiving week. I'm thankful for tons of things in my life. So, and I'm sure most of you are as well. For those of you that have things that think you don't have things you're thankful for, hey, you're here and you're breathing. And even if you're in America with not that much money, you're still better off than most people in a lot of countries around this world. So just be thankful for what you got. Be happy. Show some love to those around you, not just this week or the holiday season when Christmas is coming up, but 24/7, 365 or 66 days a year. Again, if this is your first time listening, there are 407 previous episodes to this. The list is great and long. Like I said beforehand, if you're a person that primarily listens to Christian-based rock and roll, Michael Sweet of Stryper has been on here. John Cooper of Skillet has been on. I know I've had a few other bands, some of those bands that kind of, blur the line, but I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head right now. I know that when it comes to secular music and it comes to what Jamie was talking about with the 80s and the Sunset Strip, that's kind of where the majority of the bands on this podcast have come from, whether it be Tesla, who has had members on this podcast 5 different times, Great White on here 3 different times with different members. In fact, Jack Russell, the lead vocalist of Great White during its heyday, passed away just a few months ago, and I was fortunate enough to have him on this podcast just a few months before he passed earlier this year. So I'm so happy that I finally got to, because that was one of my bucket list goals for this podcast. Also had on members of Whitesnake, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Kiss, Slaughter, Firehouse, Warrant, Trickster, Kicks, Junkyard. If you like your stuff really heavy, I've had on members of the Black Dahlia Murder. In fact, Trevor, who passed away, the lead vocalist of Black Dahlia Murder, was on here several years ago. I've also had on members of Megadeth, Testament, Death Angel, Dark Tranquillity. More mainstream stuff, we've had on members of Shinedown, Trapped, Hellstorm, Three Doors Down. We've had on Shooter Jennings. Vanilla Ice has been on this podcast, and that was an extremely fun episode. So if you like some 90s nostalgia, be sure to check out that episode. But there's tons you can look at, so give us a follow on all the socials. TheThunderUnderground.com is the website. You can listen directly there. You can also listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard. So wherever you're listening right now, please like, subscribe, or follow so you don't miss updates on future episodes. One of my future episodes coming up here in December, of course, will be the best of 2024. I've been doing that every year since this podcast started. The end of year celebration with the best, basically the top albums of the year when it comes to my views. So it might be totally different than yours, and hey, that's the beauty of music, right? I've also got some other guests coming up that I will announce once the episode's been recorded. Until then, once again, follow 13 Minutes on all their socials. Hit them up at Linktree/13 Minutes Official. That's Roman numerals. And again, a massive thank you to Sunset Tattoo, DEB Concerts, and Jamie Kucinski. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.